And welcome back for game number 4 between Yangshigi Shunyan or Yangshigi Shunyan. I'm not sure how you pronounce it in Korean, but I assume it's something along those lines. Please not Yangshigi Shunyan like the Americans would pronounce it, but Yangshigi Shunyan. And he's playing against 458, as I've already mentioned, because this is game number 4 between these two powerhouse players, powerhouse fast map players from Korea. 458 has a reputation. tOki also has a reputation because they're both top tier players. Not top tier, but they are top tier players. Whereas 458 is only a top tier player on his Protoss, tOki is a top tier player on his Protoss and his Terran. And he is the white Terran on the middle right spot up against 458 on the bottom left corner who is playing the brown Protoss, and he is starting off with the pylon. And a geyser. Well, an assimilator. Alright, that's interesting. This is unheard of. This means that I have no idea what he's going to do. There are many options that he has. One of those options is Dragoons, which does fit into the picture here of going for an early assimilator. Could mean Dragoons, right? So he pulls off 3 probes, puts them on the gas, starts mining his gas, and he's not building more gateways just yet. He is still mining. And there goes the probe. Adds on another gateway, adds on a 3rd gateway, so this has to be a Dragoon build. There's no other way. This is a Dragoon build. Cybernetics Core will come up right after this gateway. He's not gonna make a Zealot, because that's gonna make it harder for him to get those that cybernetic core down. Cybernetic core comes down. He's gonna make a pylon in his choke too, because he's not making it in his base. Has to be in his choke. Alright. Makes... what? Wait, he makes it on the side of his base, so he isn't even using it for his choke. He's just making it at a random location. Not sure if there's a thought process behind that pylon, but... wow. Alright, so this is going to be a very exciting early game, honestly. Dragoons are just... maybe he's going for Dragoons because he knows what build tOki is doing now. Either he checked a replay, or he noticed something in tOki's playstyle from last game, where tOki was going for the depot wall, and now he knows that the best counter to that is going for very, very quick Dragoons with range. Okay, he's got a single Zealot in the mix there. That's one is just for scouting, or maybe to throw tOki off. tOki going for a bunker inside the entrance of 458. This game is already all kinds of unorthodox and something we've never really seen before. So there's a bunker coming out in 458's choke that might throw a wrench into his Dragoon plans in every single way. There's already an academy coming down. He's added on a single command center instead of 2 command centers, and he's mining gas. He's got a single depot in his front that was intended to be a wall, but he never continued on building the wall. Alright, there is a depot, a bunker. So he is somewhat making a wall. I guess this depot is just there to slow 458 down, or to throw 458 off, or to keep 458 on the defensive. Under the illusion of having to be defensive. Dragoon range, couple of, well, 20 seconds away from finishing. More Dragoons finishing up. Another wave of Dragoons is gonna come out. He's making a pylon there. Nexus also. So he is planning on going for a boosted economy build. And yeah, he's being very defensive. tOki now pulling back Marines from the bunker. Still a single Marine in there. A single Marine is probably to throw 458 off, or to just deal some damage with a single Marine. Alright, so the game is on its way. 2 bunkers in the front. Alright, now he's moving out. He is attacking the bunker. The Marine inside the bunker will go down along with the bunker. Dragoons have their range finished. Zealot there in the mix, just for the sake of having a Zealot in the mix. Alright, Dragoons meet the front. Did he upgrade his range or not? I should have kept track of that. Jesus Christ, I should have kept track of whether he was or wasn't making Dragoon range, Marine range, but he is getting Stim upgrade. He's already moved a couple of SCVs to the front of his choke so you can repair the bunkers against the Dragoon fire up until he has his siege mode and tank up. But now the Dragoons are hammering away on the bunker. Bunker is losing a lot of HP. He could have taken down the bunker, but he decides not to take down the bunker because he tries to micro backwards because tOki does have marine range. He could have taken down the bunker at least, but he micros backwards and focuses on the other bunker, and the bunker survives. A little bit of a misplay from 458, although he wouldn't have gotten all that much out of taking down that bunker there. But that's very, very, very convenient for tOki. tOki takes no damage. And he's on his... Yeah, he's just happily building up. Although this time with a little bit of a slower economy than in the previous games, but a way safer playstyle. You know, having bunkers out in the front to defend against Dragoons. So a little bit of a unlucky choice in strategy for 458. On the upside, 458 now has 2 Nexus added on to his base. And his economy is booming. Some 30 probes against 31 SCVs, but his probes will soon go beyond the number of tOki. There's a Citadel of Dune. There's 2 robotic facilities being made in his choke at the more orthodox location. And there is a Templar's Archive. Basically, these robotic facilities get placed there so you can rally all your gateways to this point. And you don't have to rally point the shuttles. You can just... They spawn and you load them up with units immediately. Dragoon's just there to keep tOki from moving out. tOki can't even move out because he lifted up his barracks. He's really, really playing on a knife's edge. Once again, he's got a single factory. He's now adding on a second factory. And maybe a third factory even with this SCV. There's a third factory. He's not making raids. Alright. So he is planning on playing on a knife's edge. He's back to cutting corners. But this time he's cutting corners more smartly. Because he knows that 458 got slowed down by his build order. So 458's drops are delayed. So maybe he can afford to go for this specific build. 5 factories in total, of which 4 are under construction. 1 is about to finish. 2 more are only just started up. He's got vision over the hills this time with those barracks and the engineering bay. He's now making turrets on the sides. Building depots on both sides here. Instead of some players build a lot of depots here. He's building those depots there on the side to keep this entire space in the middle of his base completely open for movement and for buildings like factories and starports. Solid is scouting the sides just to get information on whether tOki has buildings flying over the hills or not, or whether he has marines placed on the sides like he did in the previous games. But this time he just has those barracks and engineering base on the side. There's a huge hole here though, so 458 is most definitely going to fly in from this side. Because he knows that there's no vision over the hill on this specific area. Now he's moving out Dragoons to both sides to take down those barracks. tOki will have to pull down those barracks, pull those barracks back into his base, or otherwise he cannot make factories anymore. So, and he does, he listens to my advice. Pulls back his barracks, but the engineering bay at the top also gets pulled back, so he will not lose a single building. He landed a tank on the hill. Tank is firing away at the Dragoons and the Zealot, just really making it life harder for 458. 458 pulls back his Dragoons back into his base. He's got 4 shuttles finished. And shuttle speed is on the way. Once those shuttle speed finishes, he will send his drop out. 4 Templars in the mix. More shuttles under production. Being warped in from home base Ire, or whatever the home planet for Protoss is. I never really kept up with the lore. I played the campaign once, years ago. Never interested me that much. Yeah, energy for Templars on the way. Upgrades for tOki also already on the way. He's upgrading Goliath range. He's got siege mode finished, as we can see by the siege tanks. And he's upgrading weapons and armor for ground, not for air though. He's going for a strategy I once saw Light do, where he goes for Goliath as anti-drop, uses Goliath to target down shuttles. But as Goliaths are not in position to fight these shuttles, shuttles dropping their units on top of tOki's minerals, and 458 gets great storm off, kills about 30 SCVs, kills a single one more. And that's a beautiful pickup for 458, also killing these turrets on the low side there of tOki's base. tOki now microing back his tanks. He doesn't want to lose those tanks to the Zealots, but his tank might go down. Yes, it goes down. No, wait. He doesn't kill the tank. He runs away. Goes for the SCV. He should have taken down the tank. Ah. 458, why? Why are you doing this to me? Alright, so he more or less survives, loses a couple of SCVs, his income is hurting, but this is not the end of the world. He can still come back from this one because he's on 3 command centers, has a bunch of units out, he's producing a bunch of more units, specifically Goliaths, so he can take down shuttles, and he's also expecting the very early carriers, and he's right about the carriers. The carriers will be out very early because the fleet beacon is already on the way, and 458 is already producing a horde of Stargates here in the top corner of his base. He's loading up the second drop. He's not going for small drops, he's just going for the big mass drops. 8 Zealots in those shuttles and 4 Templars. He's coming in from the southeastern side. He gets spotted out by this dropship flying out. So now the Goliaths know that there's a drop coming. He focuses down. Oh, he doesn't focus down the shuttles, and it looks like only the correct shuttle went down. All of the Zealots got dropped here on the floor, but wind up dealing not that much damage at all. He's now attacking the front, going to take down these bunkers, but these Marines in the bunkers are really doing a great job of taking down those Zealots. The depots, though, are burning, and both of them are going to die to burn damage in the long run. This one will die within about 30 seconds or so. It's burning down pretty quickly. He took down a bunch of turrets here on the side, but not as many as he had hoped. The drop winds up being unsuccessful. tOki lives yet for at least until the next drop, which should be enough time to build himself up to 70 SCVs and get more Goliaths out onto the map, a couple of tanks too. Drop comes flying in from the southern side. He gets the Templar out. Templar storms. Templar gets no kills. Second Templar also storms, gets a kill on a Goliath or a medic. And the third storm comes down and the SCV's mining gas. That's annoying because now he has to pull off some SCVs back onto the gas. I always hate when that happens because it's really annoying. Because it's a slow process of putting SCVs on your gas, way slower than everything else. This is a very precise movement that you have to do. And he puts them on the gas. Alright. So the next move. What will the next move from 458 be? It's going to be drops. Of course it's going to be drops. What else could it be? Will he mix it up with a frontal attack too to take down the depots here in the front? Well, that last depot there. Maybe he's going to go for the bunkers. If you can get Zealots down on the bunkers though, that will be very good for 458. But there's a tank there on the high side, on the high ground. He's going to trip out his Zealots though. Throws down the pylon, drop flies in. Goliaths take down the shuttle, take down the Corsair, and there are no Templars out. Wait, there's a Templar out. He storms. Alright, he tried to storm the SCVs, but the SCVs, instead of going this way, went that way, to the north, to this gas here. So he pulled them off and put them on the gas, and he avoids losing SCVs to the storm. Loses a tank to the storm, though. That's really unfortunate, but that's the least amount of damage you could probably have taken. And now he's going to start adding on to his base. 72 SCVs around his base. About 65 of them are mining. A couple of them are built. No, don't kill your choke just yet. 458 is going to come with the unit attack from the front. Don't kill your choke. No. tOki, what are you doing? No. Zealot's going to come in from the front. And they pull back because he doesn't want to fight. And he goes in because he wants to fight. Alright. Nice. He goes in. And because there's no wall, he can now get on top of these siege tanks and start dealing damage. Though he doesn't deal that much damage at all because the tank here on the high side is making the AI of the Zealots just trip out. Because they want to focus the tank because the tank is attacking them before anything down here is attacking them. But they can't reach it and they start running back and forth. So it's really important when you attack into a tank on the high ground to manually control all your Zealots. But that's just so much work because you have to pump new Zealots at your base as well. He's on 100 probes, alright. That's why his mass maybe is so small. Even these carriers are kind of small in number. Only 4 of them are out. And there are not as many Zealots out as there could be. He has to kill about 30 of those probes if he wants to get his mass up to size. Actually, having a mass that small is entirely in favor of tOki, who is now being very aggressive. And it's going to be hard for 458 to punish this aggression because his unit count will be smaller than what it should be. So carriers come in. Zealots chasing the tanks. Tanks retreating back into the base. Carriers now hammering away on some tanks. Tank goes down. Goliaths go down. More carriers regrouping up with the carriers that were already there and fighting. He's just gotta focus on taking down the shuttles here on the southern side of tOki's base. Open up himself a couple of holes for shuttles to fly through. Goliaths now chasing the carriers. Carriers running away for their lives because they don't want to die. Carriers are big but slow and take a lot of damage from Goliaths. Goliaths have upgrades on them. 222 upgrades already. That's a really, really good progression from 458. From tOki, consistently pumping out upgrades for his air, for his ground. Whereas 458 has a lot of upgrades for his air. There's a 2-2 upgrade for his air units. Air armor is almost finished, so almost level 1 air armor. And again, still on the 100 probes, kills some probes, and he lost SCVs. I missed the drop. I was focused on talking gibberish that I completely missed the drop happening. I'm sorry for that, but he's down back to 35 SCVs. He lost half of them, which is most of his SCVs that he had on his minerals. So now he's pulled SCVs out of his gas again and started rebuilding. But the fact that 458 has a small mass because he has too many probes is entirely in tOki's favor once again, because tOki doesn't have to fight off a huge mass. He just has to fight off a huge mass that is a bit smaller than an actually huge mass. It's just a somewhat semi-huge mass that isn't really a huge mass, but just a mass. And his own mass is able to fight that because he's got great upgrades on his tanks and his Goliaths. And these Zealots pretty much die before they can even reach the Goliaths and the tanks. And the number of carriers is also too small to really fight into this. 9 carriers in total up against 15 Goliaths. He gets a great storm off on the Goliaths. A bunch of these Goliaths go down. 3 storms, in fact, going down on the Goliaths. Half the Goliaths have gone down to the storms. Carriers, interceptors helping out a little bit, but 458 decides to pull back because he doesn't want to fight into these carriers just yet without ground support. And 458 is finally killing off probes, but he only sends out 12 probes to die, which is definitely not enough. It's something, but not yet enough. More units streaming out from 458's gateways into the choke, where he has them rallied. Upgrades all on the way, fighting breaking out again on the middle. There's turrets behind the Goliaths that are helping take down the interceptors. tOki is focusing on the interceptors, not focusing on the carriers. Once those carriers come into range though, he will definitely take down the carriers. His SCVs, once again dodging a drop. Storm misses the SCVs, but it does hit the minerals, so he does storm on the right spot, theoretically speaking. But theoretically speaking, also the wrong spot, because there's nothing to storm on top of the spot. It's a little bit of a misstorm, but he had nothing to storm anyway, because the SCVs had pulled away. Now units again coming in from the front. tOki only on 130 supply against 200 supply from 458, and his minerals are only on 300, so he's very low on minerals, and he has to pull back to his choke, get a wall up even, but he won't be able to get a wall up because he's pulling the SCVs back to his minerals. Alright, 458 doesn't go in. He decides to wait for the carriers before he goes in with his ground forces. Tank on the high ground still fucking him up really badly. The Zealots there tripping out, and he didn't send his, he sent a couple of Zealots in, but the Zealots went down to the fire from the tanks and the Goliaths that had regrouped in the front there to help take down and defend the front. The carriers do end up taking down 2 buildings in the front. Now they're going back to focusing on these turrets here on the side while he's reproducing his mass he just sent in and died. Now he's also making a drop, sending out the drop. The drop is going to fly in over the cover or under the cover of these interceptors on the side that are taking fire and focus away from the turrets. Goliath slowly being repositioned closer to his minerals, taking down interceptors while they're doing it. A bunch of raids have been produced for tOki, and there's no observer out. Drop comes in, drop storms, and he kills 5 or so SC. Another storm comes out on the Goliaths. No Goliaths go down, but now the raids are taking down the carriers because there is no observer. No observer in the mix means these carriers cannot fight back against the raids. The raids eating up the carriers like a snack, a tasty snack. Even though they're quite beefy for a snack, but not strong enough to survive that without an observer. If you can't fight back, well, you can't fight back, I guess. A couple of Zealots streaming in through the front, just to keep tOki a little bit on his toes, but these units coming in from the front don't really pose much of a threat, and they die. So we have hit a point of rest in the game. Because now 458 is just cannoning up the middle and waiting for his carriers that so unfortunately died due to forgetting to put observers into the mix. He's got an observatory finished up now, and he's making observers now too, in order to fight back against his carriers. A little bit of an oversight on his side. If he had that observer there, he could definitely have finished the game off there, because tOki was really hurting. His SCVs weren't mining because he could pull off the minerals. And it would have just made life so much easier for him if he had that observer. So this game might go the distance because of a single little oversight that he did not oversee or forget in the games prior to this. tOki still on the defensive though. It's only on 10 factories, 4 starports, adding a 5th one. I assume that's a 5th one. That's a 5th one, it is. Carrier drop flying in from the southern side again. 4 zealots, 8 zealots, 4 templars. Gonna come flying in. Raids focusing down the shuttles without effort at all. Shuttles pretty much died instantly. He gets a couple of zealots down on the low ground there inside of his base, but they don't really do much. Units inside the base taking them down without effort. Tanks, zealots here in the front tripping balls because of these tanks on the hills. 458 throwing down even more cannons on the middle, just building a huge buffer zone through which tOki has to go through before he can even think of attacking 458. 458's carrier mass has been rebuilt. Just waiting for those 4 additional carriers. Up until then, we won't be seeing much action. And not seeing much action means tOki gets all the time he needs to rebuild his base and build his base bigger than ever before. You can see he's added on even more factories. He's got 12 factories out on the map now, 6 starports. He's gonna make a mixture of Valkyries, Goliaths, and tanks. And a couple of raids here, of course, too, but he might phase out those raids in favor of Valkyries or Goliaths later into the game. Because 458 does have an observer, and raids don't really do that well against observers. Tanks are now hitting the middle, and they're attacking the tank. It's going to clean out and stop that advancement from tOki. Goliaths in the back though, taking down interceptors. Raids flying in, ready to hammer on these carriers. A single carrier goes down. He's now taking down the observers. Observers go down. He takes down the corsairs. Observers are unscanned and undetected. So all the raids go down to the combined efforts of cannons and carriers. Now the raids are going to get replaced by Valkyries. Valkyries tend to do a little bit better against carriers because they just have AoE damage and kick down all the interceptors. Valkyries moving down to the south, ready to fire on these interceptors. Goliaths also slowly moving into location to start firing on the carriers themselves. Carriers also take damage from the Valkyries when the interceptors enter the carriers to recharge their weapons. Right. He does get Templars down on the low. Wait. Alright, so he did pull his SCVs off of his minerals as the Templar moves into range of the SCVs, but he only kills a couple of SCVs as most of the SCVs got pulled off. And carriers are being chased off by the combined effort of Goliaths and Valkyries. Valkyries just hammering away at the interceptors, making it easier for Goliaths not to take any. There's a lot of interceptors have died there, and now he's just focusing directly on the carriers as most of the interceptors died, and the Valkyries will take less damage from the carriers, but he's back to firing on the interceptors again. He should be focusing on the carriers because all the carriers are on such very low HP. If you just focus down the carriers, you will take down this carrier mass and buy yourself more time, because for the left Reapers are taking down the carriers. Carriers dying rather quickly, although not as quickly as they could be dying, because Valkyries mostly do AoE damage. The single target damage is not that high. There's a lot of sprites flying in circles, flying around there. Templar moving in. Is it going to get a storm off on the Valkyries, or is it just going to move into its untimely death? He doesn't want to live on this world anymore. Dies. There's a lot of robotic facilities out here on the top of the middle left spot. Stargates too, so you might be switching up to recalls of mass reavers in the near future. Don't want to call it yet, but that's pretty much the only scenario in which you would use an expo like that. Shuttles coming in from the south, get spotted by a barracks. tOki is now hunting for these shuttles. Shuttles trying to run away, but the Valkyries find them and get their shots up, and the shuttles go down within a mere couple of seconds because Valkyrie AoE damage is just so damn high. And he's just waiting for his carriers to finish up. His carriers really haven't been having the best time in the world. Now he's mixing it up by making more ground forces because there's a lot of Valkyries out for tOki, and Zealots just do great against Valkyries because Valkyries cannot hit ground forces and Zealots can't hit Valkyries either. So Valkyries kind of end up just being that supply. They eat up a lot of supply, but these tanks on the high grounds make it very hard for 458 to really get anything going here. The tanks on the high ground have not been contested this entire game, even though 458 had plenty of chances to take them down. Which means that tOki can now once again start up the push on the cannons in the middle. The little buffer that 458 threw down to buy himself time to recover his carrier mass in the case it would go down. Dropship goes down to the cannons, just getting rid of supply. Opening it up. Now Zealots getting a great surround off on these tanks on the middle. Tanks in the middle will go down to the Zealots and the Templars. Templars storming on top of it. And there are only 7 carriers in production because they only have 7 stargates there. Whether he's going to produce even more, I do not know. I have a feeling... No, he's just making Corsairs now. I have a feeling he's going to stick to more ground forces now because all these Valkyries are out. And I think he already killed some Valkyries there. Maybe the Valkyries died to the Corsairs. I'm not too sure, but he's got less... Oh, they're all in his base. So he still has all those Valkyries out. And I really hope that 458 switches to a ground mass, because this would just be the perfect situation for a ground mass, because there are so many Valkyries and there is just no answer to a ground mass. With all these Valkyries, it was first take tOki to send all those Valkyries down into the cannons and have them die before he can start replacing them with ground units that can fight against Zealots. But he decides against it. He's assuming more carriers are going to be out for 458. 458 instead now has mixed it up. He's got a lot of Corsairs. Corsairs do pretty well against Valkyries unless stacked on top of each other. Bunch of storms going down on the Valkyries. All these Valkyries go down to the storms. Valkyries chased away for once instead of the carriers being chased away. Now the carriers are taking down the tanks here on the middle, and we're taking down the tanks. Tanks will get a couple more shots. Now the Valkyries coming back into the mix, and they are... An EMP came down on the carriers. Carriers have all lost their shields, and they will very quickly die to these Valkyries. But these Valkyries are being chased away by storms and Corsairs. The Corsairs go down. Now the Valkyries have free shots on the carriers. They are chasing the carriers. They start getting their shots off, but there are not that many Valkyries out there in the mix. So they don't deal that much damage against the carriers. You need way more Valkyries in order to take down those carriers within the blink of an eye. Alright, Lonely Vessel gets sniped down. The game has kind of slowed down as well. Both players playing on really high APM, but the action has kind of toned down. This is mostly just back and forth running. Alright, drop comes in. He's dropping on top of the tanks and the turrets there on the low ground. But all these tanks here on the low ground will prove to be way too much to handle for these Zealots. So that kind of winds up doing nothing at all, because there's so many tanks out there. Now the Valkyries are hammering away at the carriers. A carrier goes down, second carrier goes down as well. Third and fourth carrier about to go down to the fire of these Valkyries and Goliaths. Only 3 carriers left. The 3 carriers will go down within a matter of seconds. It's really just 458 has been doing a really poor job of attacking here. Or tOki is just doing such an amazing job of defending. But all I really want to see is a tech switch from 458 away from carriers into a ground mass, because the ground mass in this situation with that many Valkyries out would just prove to be way stronger than, well, carriers really. Now, tOki is still sticking to producing Valkyries. And 458 has stopped making carriers. So this is really, really, really good for 458, because Valkyries will not be useful at all. At least not for the foreseeable future. There are Reavers being produced here in the top size, going for their mass Reaver drop right on top of the minerals, or maybe on the side of tOki's base. tOki, however, does have Valkyries. But tOki does not know that this here in the top side exists. Just gonna check if he knows. He doesn't know. He has not scanned that portion there. So he doesn't know that the Reavers are being loaded up into shuttles on the middle left of the map. Zealots coming out from 458's base. Gonna put a short stop on this push from tOki. tOki pulling back his tanks as unseized them. Is now microing them backwards. A couple of storms came down on the tank. Another storm comes down on the tanks. Tank's quite beefy, so they won't die to a single storm. Now, Templar's morphing, but the drop is gonna come in from 458. 458. In tOki's Valkyries get in just in time, but 4 Reavers do get unloaded, and there are no units anywhere within the vicinity for tOki to fight these Reavers, and the Reavers are gonna take down this command center. And tOki once again, he barely loses his command center, and that's all because he didn't keep good vision over the map. So the tech switch from 458 winds up dealing way more damage than it should have done had tOki covered his options. tOki assumed there would be more air, and there was no air, there was just ground. tOki now once again forced to pull back to the safe confines of his base. These Zealots trying to get in through the front, but they're just there to secure the middle of the map. They can't really fight into these tanks, these 2 tanks on the high ground and these tanks on the low ground that are unsieged. tOki's still trying to be aggressive, knowing he has to at least keep the pressure up on 458, because 458 just lost most of his mass. But he can very quickly reproduce his mass because he's got a lot of gateways here in his base. He's got 6 carriers there sitting in his base as well. So units gonna come streaming in through the front. Tanks on the high ground somewhat being a saving grace because these Zealots will already take a lot of damage from the tanks before they even reach the tanks inside of the base itself. And they're kind of tripping out, as you can see here on the side, although the Dragoon that got mixed in took down the tank. And now these tanks are sieging up. 458 is running for the turrets, but most of the Zealots go down before the Zealots reach the turrets, so that's kind of unfortunate. He should have just gone for the tanks there because the tanks sieged up. He's now unsieging the tanks because there are Zealots on top of the SCVs. 458 knows that if tOki doesn't unsiege, he will kill all of his own SCVs, so that's a nice move from 458. But tOki had to unsiege already regardless. Turrets dying on the top side there. So a little bit of a hole's been opened up on the top side there, but 458 does no longer need a hole because he's got a hole in the front and a hole in the top, and he's just gonna stream his units in through the front, where tOki is not really able to defend himself because he still has a shit ton of Valkyries. Luckily for him, 458 has switched back to a couple of carriers, so these carriers will be met by Valkyries, a lot of Valkyries in fact. And tOki's now hunting for those carriers because he scanned them, I assume, or maybe he was just gonna sacrifice his Valkyries and just so happens to run into carriers, and he runs into his shuttle, takes down the shuttles, units get dropped on top of the hill. Dragoons will be able to fight and kill these Valkyries here. Tanks being dropped on the high ground. Valkyries are gonna move in and take care of these carriers, but Corsairs are also being mixed in. And he's actually doing a lot of damage with those Valkyries on those Corsairs and Interceptors. Mostly Interceptors already went down. They will now be unable to take down these tanks, but units getting dropped on the high ground. But units getting dropped on the high ground from 458 are being taken out by the 3 tanks that tOki put on the high ground. Now the carriers take down the tanks, but the Valkyries are hammering away at the Interceptors. Carrier is forced to pull back because he doesn't want to lose his carriers to those Valkyries. So even though tOki lost his main command center, lost a lot of his workers, he is still able to output a mass and put pressure on 458. That's one of the upsides of playing Terran. You don't need that many SCVs in the late game because you already have all your buildings and you just gotta produce a bunch of tanks and Goliaths. And the tanks won't die that quick because they shoot from afar, and by the point that the Zealots do reach the tanks, they're mostly already dead. So 458 going back to a bigger number of carriers. He's still going to keep on throwing out drops. He's got a lot of Corsairs out. More than I would like to see from him. But those Corsairs have a purpose. Namely assisting drops with getting into the base of tOki. He's going to follow this drop. I'm going to see if I can follow this one. Yeah, I don't know how to follow. Oh, you press spacebar. Alright. So you press spacebar and you follow the drop, but it's kind of laggy, it's kind of jumpy, alright? The drop gets through, the shuttles get through, the SCVs get pulled off the minerals. Templar comes out, Templar misses the storm, Templar goes down. Was not yet down, but it will go down very soon. There's another Templar there in the top side that gets EMP'd. tOki noticed it and takes down the energy on Templar. Still only on 48 SCVs. He's now started adding on new SCVs because he knows he needs more minerals in order to fight into 458. Another drop is coming in. So this is the 458 specialty. Rapid succession drops. But the drop goes down to the Goliaths and deals no damage at all. The Dragoon got out, but the Dragoon dies to tank fire. Carriers here just cleaning out Vision for 458 all over the map. Goliaths now hunting for those carriers. Goliaths meet the carriers. Carriers are fighting back, but slowly retreating, and they go back in because they know that there are not that many Goliaths. Although it wasn't that smart of a choice because he loses a single carrier. If he just pulled back, he wouldn't have lost the carrier, but he loses the carrier. tOki loses most of the Goliaths there though, but he's got a huge mass here on the middle, and he's slowly, very slowly advancing deeper over the middle, closer to 458's base. He's got 56 SCVs now, more SCVs already being produced. He's sieging up units next to his minerals to protect his minerals from drops. He's got drop ships there in the mix too to land units on top of the hills, but 458 put his own Dragoons on the hills there as a preemptive measure against tanks being lifted up onto the hills. And this is the only portion where tOki can lift tanks up on the hills because there are cannons on this side. And if you land them on this side, the cannons would take down the tanks being landed on the hill. So smart from 458. 458 now flying in another drop. There's nothing there to intercept the shuttle. tOki does pull his SCVs off of his minerals. Still a couple of SCVs left on the minerals, and he takes them off. And another storm, 3 storms in total, but only, well, 13 SCVs died. It's still more than the minimal. That's like a pretty good drop. Not as good as it could have been, but it's a pretty good drop. A little nice pickup. Slows tOki down yet again a little bit. Now carriers streaming out in the middle. I'm going to try to take down some of these tanks here on the middle before the carriers, the Goliaths, can focus on the carriers. And he's running away as the Goliaths arrive. He goes back in just to get a shot off on a single Goliath. But that was maybe not that smart because now these Goliaths get some good shots off on the carriers. But the carriers immediately do get back to the hills. And the fight erupts yet again on the middle. Goliaths get taken down really quickly. EMP comes down on the carriers. Goliaths chasing down the carriers. Carriers running away back to the base because they don't want to die. And Goliaths just focusing on the carriers. The carriers, however, do all survive and get back to the safe comfort of the choke of 458, where it's a bunch of cannons, and the drop is leaving the base at the same time. Units and Goliaths mostly streaming out onto the middle of the map. He's gonna kill. He walks into carriers. Carriers pulling back. A storm comes off on the Goliaths. Another storm comes down on the Goliaths. These carriers will definitely be able to. Oh, a single carrier goes down. He's gonna try to take down a second carrier, but the Goliath goes down just before the carrier dies. Well, these carriers are on very low HP though. Let's open up that window. As you can see, drop comes flying in at the same time. tOki does not pull his SCVs off his minerals. He didn't see the drop flying. He pulls his SCVs off. He splits them up, but he... Oh, 5 storms in total. Alright, so 458 manages to land the perfect drop at the perfect time. The exact drop that he needed to slow tOki down. And this is all because he cleaned out all these barracks that tOki had flying in this area to give himself vision. And he didn't give himself new vision over the hill, so that makes it hard for tOki to respond and easy for 458 to fly in. So now tOki is in a really bad spot because he's very low on Goliath count. He's got 3 Goliaths out in the middle, more Goliaths streaming out from his base, but those Goliaths will not be enough to fight against these carriers unless he gets a very good EMP off on them or micros his Goliaths in such a way that it's just... He pulls off a miracle. Cannon tanks now going down to interceptor fire. He moves his Goliath out in the middle, takes down a single Goliath, now focusing... Takes on a single carrier, takes down 2 carriers. He's focusing on the carriers, but he only has 2 Goliaths left, and the Goliaths are being targeted down while 458 micros his carrier back away to safety. And there is no drop being loaded up for 458, although he does have shuttles being produced. tOki still has control over the middle of the map. He's got raids now instead of Goliaths. A couple of Goliaths are in his base. He sees these... He saw those observers there on the side. Well, this one is out of range, so he can't see that one. Probably just trying to clean up things in the case that He's on 34 minerals. He's only got 39 SCVs in his base, of which about 36 are mining. A couple more SCVs streaming out, being finished. And dropships being spread out to get himself vision over the bottom side of the map, but the dropships fly into the carriers. He took down the observer, so now he can take down these these carriers once again. Another observer comes into the mix though, and the raids immediately end up going down as the carriers return fire and counter on the raids. Raids pulled away a little bit, but he's surrounded by an observer and carriers. Now he's flying away, but there's still an observer there. He's now trying to pull those carriers out into the Goliath fire though, but tanks disappear behind the hills. He's gonna have to take down these raids on the hills really quickly, so to deny those Goliaths from firing on the intercept on the carriers. Carriers pull away. Drop comes in. Drop finds nothing. No SCVs died. Well, a couple of SCVs died to the... No, don't put that back on. Alright, so yeah, that's the game. I mean, he only lost 8 SCVs there, but he was going to lose more SCVs to those 2 zealots as he still had the tank seats right next to the SCVs. But that's the game. tOki, I think tOki thought he killed way more SCVs than he in fact did. He only killed 8 SCVs, so he still had a chance to come back and stay in this game. But he calls the GG at 40 minutes in, as 458 somewhat manages to keep damaging tOki, but tOki kept staying alive. The attacks from 458 weren't that successful all around, aside from the drops on the minerals, but those were that's mainly attributed to the fact that tOki didn't do that well of a drop at defending against drops. The only thing he did really well was pulling his SCVs off his minerals, but he ends up dying again. So in this series, I think this is not necessarily a series these two played. I think they just played a string of games, and you know, that's what people do sometimes, just play a string of games with no best of 7 or best of 5 concept in their mind. And tOki has proven himself unable to win against 458 in this series as of yet. The score is 4-0 for 458. tOki lost TVP, CVP, TVP, and TVP, which is kind of a given. Protoss is kind of supposed to win most of the time. And 458 has shown off not his best Protoss, in my opinion. I'm not really liking the strategy that he's going for. It ends up working, though. But would it have worked against a player of, for example, Brains level, or Monk's level, or Minchul's level? I'm not too sure. I really prefer his other Protoss style, where he just bombards you with drops non-stop from all sides. You don't get a single moment to breathe. Then he throws in the recalls and the frontal attacks. I just don't like his carrier play, that's all. I don't like his carrier play. It didn't seem that strong. Anyway, this game is over. Score is 4-0. And I'm going to end this game right here. This video, in fact, right here. And game number 5 will be out the moment you click on it. Thanks for watching this one. It was a little bit of a longer one. Hope you enjoyed it. Salut.